George Mikan has some of the most expensive vintage basketball cards out there. In fact, one of his rookie cards has sold for over $800,000. And the best part is that's not even the highest grade of that card. Today, we're taking a look at his top 15 cards ranging from 1948 all the way through the 1990s, which includes some of his autographs. Also, we'll be covering some of the really tough regional issues, foreign issues, and everything in between. So let's take a look at Mikan's best cards. So who was George Mikan? Well, George Mikan was one of the most dominant players in basketball history, holding numerous records such as the most rebounds in a single game, consecutive field goals in a game, most points per game in a season, most minutes per game in a season, and most points in a single game. He's considered basketball's first dominant center. And what I should also mention is for this video, we're going to be going from kind of the earliest cards all the way through the 90s. This video is going to be in a specific order of most expensive cards, although it does start with the most expensive being the 1948 Bowman. Also, 4 releases within the same year, such as like 1948 or 1950, 51. No preference on what card is first. I don't know the specific dates of distribution. I also doubt a lot of that is documented online. So put no value specifically what is first in the year or based off of the release date. So we'll start off with the 48 Bowman. And this card is interesting because I kind of view this as like the 52 tops of basketball cards. It's quite expensive. A lot of vintage basketball card collectors want to have this. It is out there, right? This has a pop report of 400, which is significantly higher than a lot of the other Mikan cards we're going to feature on this list. But even as like an authentic or like a 1 or 2, you're still looking at like 2.5 to 4 grand in that range. Really depends on the eye appeal side of things. Also, this card has a few different variants. Due to some ink issues, there is a copy of this out there that has a gray background, and also I believe there's copies out there without any of the red ink that has been labeled on some of the different slabs. The most expensive version of this card, which was a PSA 10, it's at the Smithsonian. So the Department of Homeland Security actually acquired that card and then gave it to the Smithsonian. But the most expensive sale on this 48 Bowman, it sold for $800,000 in a PSA 8. So I can only imagine what this PSA 10 is worth today. I don't know, maybe $1 to $2 million. I know that 8 sale was during the peak, but I believe Mikan values have held pretty steady. And a lot of people who just joined the hobby aren't going to jump into George Mikan cards. Up next, we're taking a look at a Kellogg's Pep cereal. Now, the Pep cards, they made them also for golf. There's some expensive golfers in there like Sam Snead. But for this Mikan over here, you're looking at like a pop of about 100. It's a little bit more of an expensive card. You have your 4s that are going to be about $500. A PSA 7 has sold for close to 3 grand. Another 48, this is Topps Magic Photos. Magic Photos was a multi-sport release. They have quite a few football cards in there. And also, I should mention, maybe I'll make a video on Magic Photos if there's enough interest. Although the price point on Magic Photos cards, it doesn't seem like there's a lot of hobby interest in it, but also possibly there's not a lot of people that know about Magic Photo cards existing. For this Mikan card, it shows him still in college. It says DePaul here on the front, which I think kind of subtracts a bit from the value. I even hear that with modern collectors today. They would rather have a uniform of someone in the professional league rather than college. Is it flawed? A little bit, but regardless, BVG of this card specifically sold for $76 back in 2018, so it has been a while. And this is a pretty small pop report. You're looking at 20 in general. Exhibits. So most people know about exhibits either from the baseball side of things or some of the early boxing or non-sports. There's also quite a bit of exhibits from the 1920s all the way through the 40s and 50s. But regardless, it's an oversized card. It's not as desirable as some of the other Mikan cards which are already featured. A 4 is about $125. A 6 has sold for $575. What I will say is they have thicker cardboard, so it is a little bit easier to find these in higher grades. But it's a pretty good entry-level Mikan in my personal opinion. All right, we're jumping to 1950 now, and we're going to take a look at Scott's Chips, which was a regional issue out of Minneapolis after the Lakers won the championship. I first got exposed to this card at the National a few years back. I believe one of the auction houses had the full set there, and I saw it for the first time. I'm like, this is pretty awesome. On the side, they're about the size of a tall boy, and they have really interesting graphics on it. The pop report on this is under 20. PSA 2 is sold for $8,000, and a 3.5 sold for $17,000. Some of these tough regional issues, they have a lot of diehard collectors, and they will pay up. All right, bread for energy. Now, these were inserted specifically with bread. You can see that the corners are cut out over here. It does not have corners, right? So those are all curves on here. It's just how the image specifically is. And bread for energies are really, really tough. You'll see bread for health a little bit later. It's about the same design. It's a year later. Energy is much tougher. I believe when I've had conversations with bread for energy collectors, it's either 5 to 10x the scarcity of the health. This has specifically sold for $3.5 thousand. In my opinion, it would go for more in today's market. And the pop report is about 2, although there probably is a few other copies out there. Now we have a 1950 Menko, and if you're not familiar with the Menko brand, they produce a lot of baseball cards and non-sports cards out of Japan. I believe they've been in business for 30 or 40 years. I don't know if they're still around today. But unfortunately, this card is a circular disc and it is small. So two things kind of going against it. People in this hobby really like rectangular cards and normal size cards. I should say rectangular or square cards in general. And those typically have some sort of premium. This isn't super expensive, but it is rare. A BVG 2.5 has sold for $450. The pop report is about $33. And yeah, honestly, if this was a rectangular card, I would see this being over $1,000. But just because it's an odd shape, and I also don't believe a lot of people know about it existing, that's why it's in that price point. Now here is the bread for health. This is a much better image. These are much more readily available. The sold price of a 1.5 is $1.6 thousand. Again, if you have the option, get energy over health. Although this does pop really nicely with that blue background and the yellow color on the side of things. 1951 Wheaties. You can see how this was built out over here. These are hand cut cards. You'll see another 52 Wheaties in a bit. When grading these cards, if the border is cut off, it's more likely that you're going to get an authentic with the card rather than a numerical grade. A PSA 9 has sold for $2,520. Here is a 1952 Wheaties. These are way more readily available than the 51s. A PSA 2 you can find for about $60. A 7 sold for $348. And you can see that these are the same photos, right? Side to side, except this has an orange background, whereas the other has a white background. So pretty easily to determine what year they specifically are, just based off of the background. All right, 1952 US Pro Keds. So this was either an advertisement or included with shoes, and very, very tough. In fact, the pop report right now is only 1, and the sold price on this card was $956. Again, regional issues people will pay up for. 1952 Royal Desserts. I've only owned one Royal Dessert card before, and that was of Stan Musial. Now, just to give you a reference point, I believe the Stan Musial was a $300 card, maybe a $400 card after I ended up grading it. Mikan is very tough to find with these. An authentic sold for $796. A PSA 4 has sold for $4K. And the pop report on Mikan is 8. 1955 All-American Sports Club. This is Mikan's last playing day card, and this is part of a multi-sport release. Also in this set, I believe, if I remember correctly, there is a Jackie Robinson. But on the basketball side of things, you do have Bill Russell, which was before his 1957 tops. These aren't quite expensive. In fact, the PSA 10 sold for $1,900. 8 has sold for about $400. The pop report is 19. We're jumping into the 90s now. We're going to take a look at 2 autographs of George Mikan. We're going to start off with the courtside flashback autographs, which is considered George Mikan's first autograph card. A BVG authentic of this sells for about $150. And also the same design has cards that were not autographed, and these aren't numbered at all. And to end off the video, we're going to take a look at Mikan's first Topps auto, which was from 1996, and it's a reprint of the 1948 Bowman. And if you're not familiar with the history, Topps purchased Bowman in the 1950s, and they started reproducing Bowman cards once again in baseball in 1989. at King Griffey Jr.'s rookie year. Regardless, at a 10, you can find this card for about $450. And I think it's a perfect way to end the video, right? Our first card is a 48 Bowman. Our last card is the Topps Bowman George Mikan card. Well, that's it for George Mikan cards. Thanks, guys, for watching. I'm going to put our basketball education playlist right over here. We also make a top 25 series every single month on basketball cards sold on eBay. So I highly suggest you check those out if you are newer to the channel. And we'll see you guys